I'll update, make sure all the lists are up for you so that you can make choices. Today, we're going to finish chapter 5. On Wednesday, we will finish chapter 7. And on Thursday, we will finish chapter 10. The groups on Monday have requested to me that you be able to use next week solely for your casework, and I'm perfectly fine with that. All right. So I will, at the break, I'll get the remaining cases lined up. How it'll work next week, I will be here from 11:15 to 1:15. You can come in here, you can go downstairs, you can be anywhere you want. I'm here to answer any questions. Monday and Tuesday is free day for y'all, okay? Meet with your groups online, meet wherever you can. And if you need me, I'm here. On Wednesday and Thursday, we will have group presentations. There are 5 case studies. I believe that I've had a couple of you individuals tell me that you will not be able to be here next week due to prior commitments. That's fine. I'll just make sure that those arrangements happen so that your group will be here on the day that you can be, okay? All right, a couple of last things. Okay. So without further ado. Okay, so segmentation. Targeting. Positioning. I think many times of all of marketing strategy, this is where the real grunt work happens. This is where the major decisions are made. And chapter 5 and chapter 7 will cover these. And it's how we go about conceiving of our consumer groups into segments that can be reached and accessible to marketing messages. And so what this is going to do is we're going to delve a little bit into the concepts of consumer behavior. We're going to leave out the buyer behavior for businesses. I will leave B2B discussion that happens in other places. I think this part is much more important for your overall education. And so what we want to be able to do is first discuss what a market is, and then how do we go about reaching them? So we want to take the journey with the consumer, look at how they go about thinking about things and deciding which of the goods that they wish. Because if we understand the consumers, then ultimately we can provide them the needs they want. Marketing took a big turn in the 70s when we started taking ideas from psychology. Started in the 50s with McCracken and some of the work they did. But then the first real turn in the mid 70s came when you started to see consumer, or even it's called buying behavior, starting to be used. And now consumer behavior became so big that everybody who was in marketing wanted to do nothing but consumer behavior, which was great because that meant that, you know, as far as us supply chain and channels guys, we were a smaller group, but that's great. But guess what? Consumers and the way that they act have unique ways that they interact with channels as well. And so consumer behavior spreads everywhere. So what we need to do is we need to focus on the buyer. And we have to decide, based upon our resources, can we reach the entire market? And the answer is quite simply, not reasonably well. No corporation has infinite resources to spill over into every category. All good businesses prioritize to their particular segments that want their work. They can be very narrowly focused, but that narrow focus can be pretty good. So if you go to foot sloggers in town, versus going to an academy, you have two groups that are focusing on outdoor, but entirely different ways. You know, the bigger markets like academy hopefully grab as many people who are outdoor conscious as you can possibly think of. The foot sloggers are basically focused around the individuals who live in around Watauga County. Not only that, but you can even more narrowly find organizations out there that define it even narrower, who provide equipments like skiing for rentals just for certain periods of the time. And so what groups do you go for? Well, it's mostly what are the resources that you have and how well can you focus on those groups? And so if we're to understand what is the best way or which groups or how do we do that, we need to understand the motivations and behaviors of our consumers and the needs and wants, study them, what makes them tick. And then ultimately what we can do is try to provide the goods and the goods that will satisfy this. And so this is one of those things kind of interesting. This is just, we all know most of this thing. What's interesting is to see that Facebook has had one of those mega shifts right now. YouTube has shifted back and forth. Of course, Twitter now is going back and forth as well. Every permutation that you can find of human activity you can find on social media. And so the social media segmentation, you find, ironically, Facebook now is older individuals versus younger. You find that commercialization, social media, and Facebook has started to overwhelm it. And you've seen it move in other locations. We're just trying to find that ideal consumer group and how to cater to them. And the world shifts constantly, and we need to be able to shift with it. And so, if we're going to talk about the consumer and how they buy, it's very important for us to talk about the consumer buying process. Every consumer goes through certain series of stages when they purchase a product. Let me first say also that these are the stages, and yes, this is what you need for your test, but not every consumer uses this exact way as well. We all have our own particular shortcuts when it comes to us deciding how we go about making purchases. But in the general way, this is how we do it. Many of us even avoid this entirely, that we're always looking for the newest permutation of that particular product which we enjoy the most. For those who enjoy Apple iPhones, who's got the latest? I seriously don't even know what's the latest iPhone?
15.
15? Okay, what's the next one down the pipe? I don't know.
14.
14? Wait.
15, 14, not 15.
Okay, all right. Okay. Now, but the desire for that product, especially within Apple, it gives you a certain value there that is unreplaceable or irreplaceable. And that's a very, very valuable thing for you. And so many times we will totally bypass the buying process because our consideration sets are so, fixed that we can't consider any other product. And this is the whole thing about the Apple Blue Ocean strategy. The Apple Blue Ocean strategy says, once again, Apple swims in its own ocean and there are no other substitutes for it. They've been able to achieve something that very few products can. And so, we can try to influence those things and we can, but we still want to understand the buying process because predominantly consumers use this, all right? And so let's talk about the buying process. Okay, so in the buying process, we start with the need recognition. So remember this with my very ugly stick figure that we have, that a need is the difference between the actual state and the desired state. And remember that the difference between a need and a want are not the same, all right? That a need tends to be a vagueness, all right? And this particular vagueness is hopefully something that we will use to trigger that recognition. So if we remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm just going to briefly mention it, it's not going to be worried about in the test, but one of the things that Maslow's hierarchy says is that we have some basic physiological needs that have to come first. Hunger, thirst, and yes, sex, okay? Those are all basic emotions that drive us, all right? And it is the need to be able to satisfy those things that are at a constant state with us before we can move to any other fields, all right? Now, we trigger the need to hopefully move to the want. And so how do we trigger needs? Well, we use cues, all right? So usually what we have to do is have the consumer understand the difference between their desired state and their actual state. There's a difference there. And that's enough to trigger the recognition. If the goods are small, not complex impulse items, and this is where we know our categories of goods, we trigger these things by shapes and colors. Especially impulse items, we put them in places where impulses happen. And so where are the impulse items in a supermarket? Checkout, exactly, all right? And it's not surprising and not unusual that they've funneled now through these tunnels that are half a mile long, because now everything is an impulse item. They figured this out pretty good. And so there's multiple ways in which we trigger these things, whether by shapes, by colors. It also has to come in with the difficulty and the complexity of the good itself, all right? Many times we can give a marketing message such as showing a desirable location or the completion of the task, showing you what the expectation is after you get this good, after you buy the automobile, after you buy your home. Those are examples of this triggering of the need recognition. So once we trigger the needs, we want to be able to understand what consumers want. And so the first thing, when the consumer has this need and this specified want, the consumer starts the information search. It starts to evaluate it into its consideration set. So we start out with a series of things that we consider valuable and important when it comes to purchasing an item. So when I bought my 75-inch television set when I got tenure, I had a series of choice criteria that I had when I wanted the item. So I wanted at least 75 inches to 82 inches. because anything else is really outrageous in terms of price. I had a certain price point that I did not want to hit under. I wanted it to have certain features, and so these are the portfolio of abilities that we hope that this particular item will satisfy a particular need. I didn't really need for it to have the internal software because I had used Roku's and I was fine with Roku, so it didn't have to be any more complex than that. So I had what I wanted, okay? Now, once I started that, I started to look at what's called the evoked set. Okay, and so the evoked set are those items that the consumer looks in a category that might possibly fill those needs. So I had LG, I had Samsung. I did not want any of the others brands. Well, I looked at not RCA, Sony's. But those were really the consideration set that I had, excuse me, the evoke set. Excuse me, the evoke set should have been other ones like the other ones, the Chinese ones. They were all out there, but my consideration set narrowed. LG, Samsung, and Sony. I have to pursue an information search to be able to understand or decide what particular items I wanted more than others. So what's the first thing I do? I went out to go find consumer reviews. Where do you go when you're looking for a consumer review? Where would you go? Amazon's a good one for me. Yeah, I'll do that. Anything else, or is that pretty much it? Any others, or? Yeah, Amazon is pretty trustworthy, I find. You know, I mean, I don't know of any others that I would look at, especially when you're looking at, well, no, I take it back. I went on Best Buy, because Best Buy also, you had to consider where to buy it, which was another thing that I started. So I started looking at those as well. So like I've said before, I'm a tech weenie, so I evaluate all of the technical aspects of it, probably way too much, but hey, it's a guy thing. All right. The difficulty also is that there are other things that are involved as well. Now, we're talking about a television set that was around $2,000. So financial risk is huge, all right? Also, the difficulty in transportation and all of those other things. And in my experience with the product categories, I was pretty firm on LG. I like the consumer electronics that they came up with. So that was my first consideration, but I considered Samsung as well. Did I even evaluate the actual cost, the time and money in that? No, because the money and the risk were greater than the time and the money that it took for the search. But if I'm going to buy a $2 candy bar, I'm not going to spend that amount of time evaluating. It's foolish, all right? And so it's important to understand that the cost of the search needs to be equal to the cost for the product itself. And so I created this evoke set, the ones that I think match what I am. And then I started very much narrowing it down. The big thing that I looked for, I wanted to see the clarity of the picture. I mean, after all, that's what I'm there for. I want to have a great set. And I also wanted to have one that was upwardly compatible. So that was a 4K set as well. I looked at the 8Ks and the technology has not even really caught up with that yet, so there's no reason. There's a great article, by the way, that was written in 1994 in the Harvard Business Review that says, it's called Does It Matter, or IT Matter? And it's a brilliant article which basically says, if you stay on this side of the bleeding edge of technology, you can save a substantial amount of money and be able to replace those goods in a much more valuable way. And I'm all about that. I do not want to be on that bleeding edge, because I have been, and it always seems to get dinged from it. And so I actively evaluated it. And where's the place that I actively evaluated it? I went to Walmart. Where else am I going to see all of them together? So I looked at the Samsung, I looked at the LG, and I decided I would get a Samsung. So I got their QLED. So that was the 75-inch. Now I also own a 50-inch OLED LG. Okay, Samsung's QLED, LG's OLED. Anyway, going on. I knew where I wanted to go. So then my final evaluation is how do I get this thing in my house without breaking it? Okay. And one of the things that Walmart Online did was Walmart Online would bring the shipper right to your door. And this guy was awesome because he actually helped me carry it in and mounted it for no extra charge. And I wrote a very good review to Walmart for him and thanked him for that, okay? So at the moment of purchase, even other factors can cause issues. Now, this is where utility comes in. Because when the price of something is substantial and the risk is great, we need to find time, place, and possession utilities, those abilities to help smooth this out. And so, especially in large ones, possession utility remember, this is the ability to help users get their product. Especially items that are substantially expensive. This is where possession utility really helps out. Has anyone bought a house yet? Oh, that's it. Yeah, that was a bad thing to say. Yeah. The first house or the first condo I ever owned cost $28,000. It was in Lafayette, Louisiana. My mortgage was $290 a month. But then again, I was making $1,300 a month. That was 1983. Okay, so that was a ways back. I was living large. Let me go dad on you again. I regret every piece or house I ever sold. I regret it, okay? I mean, now I look at so many other ways I could Airbnb it, but yeah, especially in this market, I think it's just crazy, right? If you ever have substantial enough and get a home, the average home or the amount of time that it takes to buy a house takes around 6.5 weeks, okay? Usually the mortgage material is around 140 pages. Usually involves 2 to 4 individuals because you got brokers or agents on each side. So, and the reasons for a lot of that is it's possession utility. It's whatever they can to try to get that house in your pocket, okay? So anyway, yeah, possession utility is a big one, especially when these things go wrong in the purchase experience or when things just happen. Marketers have to assure that you have product availability and be able to increase the probability of the purchase. At the moment of purchase, one of the things, especially over the last 30 years, that has become even more valuable in understanding the journey through the buying process is that there is a post-purchase evaluation. The post-purchase evaluation has become more and more important in understanding whether or not you've achieved success, because the post-purchase evaluation ultimately many times will determine if you have a long-term customer. Especially on expensive items. And so there are 4 ways that consumers evaluate expectations. One is delight, which means that you exceed expectations. Satisfaction, which means that you meet expectations. Dissatisfaction, which means you do not meet expectations. The last one is our friend from psychology, which is called cognitive dissonance. The cognitive dissonance in psychology says that our mind is everything that we have ever learned in our life is part of a cognitive process that's known as the apperceptive mass. Everything that we have learned, experienced, and understand exists in this mass. And what it says is that when we do something, there's the expectation in a thinking way that this is the direction or this is how we're supposed to feel. Cognitive dissonance is the difference between the reality and the expectation in a cognitive process, okay? So it does not fit the expected completion. Kind of that confused feeling, you know, it's like, God, man, I can't wait for this. And it's like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not a dissatisfaction. You're not dissatisfied. You got what you wanted, but it doesn't match the expectation, but it's not dissatisfaction. And of course, dissatisfaction is the worst because dissatisfaction, as I've said before, is a call to action. Dissatisfaction says, I'm not happy. It means that I've got to go out there and do something. And usually what that means is going on social media and saying, this bites, okay? So post-purchase experience. We know it's more important and valuable to others, especially when it comes to consumers, that, you know, bad experiences go online and talk about them. You can't control them. That's the value of social media, but it has the greatest trust. And so we do what we can to try to satisfy our consumers and just realize I'm not going to make it all. There's an old saying that the customer may not always be right, but the customer is always your customer. Okay, so we look upon this as a consumer journey. So the consumer considers the set of brands based upon the perceptions and exposure that they've had. You have this initial consideration set. The consumers add and subtract the brands that they want as they gather information. They make that purchase, get what they want, and then the consumer builds the expectations based upon the experience and decides whether or not they're satisfied or not. Each one of these steps, the marketer hopes to be able to craft something in the brand that creates value in the consumer. Okay. Along the way, we know that it is not a clear path. That, for the lack of a better word, while we're moving from recognition to post-purchase, we have something in the way, and for the lack of a better word, we could call it noise, right? They have these things that affect the consumer journey along the way. It can enhance the journey, it can lessen it, but these are processes in the consumer behavior that we need to understand along the way. So I've talked about this complexity. The highly complex, the more complex the decision is, the more moving parts, the more possible things that I need to take and make an evaluation for. Complex decisions require complex thought. And nothing is so more complex as in a house. Because first you gotta see if it matches, then you gotta see the assayers, then you've gotta see how many upgrades you've gotta make. Then you've gotta see if you're qualified, then you've gotta see if you. It's a lot, okay? Not only that, but high personal, social risk and financial risk as well. And of course, I asked everybody here who's gonna buy a minivan, you know, you laughed at me like you should, all right? You know, none of you are gonna buy a minivan. And I hope, well, one day you will, it'll be the smoothest cruise you ever had in your life, okay? Because you might have 2 or 3 little things in the back that you might want to have them enjoy the experience along with it. You know, the difficulty also is the lack of experience that we have with things also makes the journey difficult as well, which is one of the reasons why we spend so much time, especially on social media, trying to make sure that we're making the right choice. The greater the risk, financial, social, or personal, the greater the search. And this word excessive is only used for exculpatory purposes because it's not excessive to you, especially if you want to make the right choice. However, low complexity, low involvement, okay? That's why shapes and colors are so vital when it comes to going through the checkout line, okay? Because you use those information cues as a way of making choices, because you don't want to go through anything else. So there is certain pieces of information, however, you want to make sure that consumers help the product, and you just need to be aware of what they're saying. So snacks, does anybody know of the particular number that snacks are trying to hit nowadays in terms of size?
What do you mean by that? Calories?
Yes, that's what I was wanting.
100?
Calories. Yeah, because that's what I meant. You know, most snacks now are trying to hit that 100-calorie line. That's why they come out with the 8-ounce Cokes. Now, the 8-ounce Cokes are kind of interesting because we know that we enjoyed the first sip much more than we enjoyed the last sip, okay? And so if I have 2 8-ounce Cokes, I have greater satisfaction than having 1 16-ounce Coke, okay? It's 2 reasons why they do the tear and shit, like I'm gonna share my M&Ms. But that's why they come up with those sizes like that, and they segment them into smaller sizes because they give you greater satisfaction, okay? So this is the kind of information that marketers hopefully give that help solve the process. And you feel less guilty about taking a big candy bar and it's already in 2 pieces instead of 1. I mean, both, I don't care. So anyway, decision-making complexity. But we also know this is that we also have individual differences based on our occupation, socioeconomic statuses, where we are. And we'll talk about these in a few minutes, but individual differences are huge. So I rode a motorcycle many times when I was growing up, rode them across the Mississippi River Bridge. I was an idiot, zipping past trucks. I look at myself and go, what a fool I was. But hey, that was my time. I would die if I tried that now. But that's because I'm in a different, and I don't want to die needlessly, okay? I might not appear in fact. So there are other individual differences that make changes, all right? And so these individual differences drive us to make different choices. So the first ones I want to talk about, there are 2 at the top that are the most important. The number 1 influencer in your life when it comes to purchasing decisions is your family. Number 1. If you see that on a test question, remember it, okay? There is not just a chance or no reason Why you find, especially when it comes to consumer products, where the pictures are multi-generation, where there is a father and a mother and children and grandparents using a particular product because that's how you learn, all right? Children learn by watching. How many in here, when they got their insurance, asked their parents how to get insurance and they just wrote it up? Yeah, we all do. Okay. Insurance is one of those by the way, insurance is one of those great profession that takes about 10 years to really get settled because insurance kind of bumps along. But once you get a portfolio of individuals, life is good. All right. But family, very much so, except your first big purchase. What is your first big purchase? Car. That's right. Then social influence is much bigger. So let's talk about cultures and subcultures because those are large drivers anyway. Each of us lives or comes from a unique group, and that unique group drives the way that we go about and consume items, and it also sets the patterns of daily life. So I'm going to go through a little thingy that I have that I talk about social culture. This is from another that this talks about culture, and culture is what we call a set of shared beliefs and values, customs and tastes that are practiced by a group of people. It can almost be ritualistic. And you find them especially weddings and funerals. Has anybody been to a Catholic wedding? Yeah, lived through it too. Yeah. I mean, still going, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, that's what Catholic weddings are like, okay? Nothing is spared. Everybody has a great time. That's the way it should be, all right? I've been to other weddings that are 15 minutes and they serve beanie weenies and we're out of there, okay? Not my idea, okay? So anyway, culture has a very unique mix. It's eclectic. I love being around unique cultures. It's a wonderful way of, experiencing life. And so one of the cultures, every Monday in New Orleans, the blue plate specials are red beans and rice. So how did that get to be? Okay. So New Orleans, I'm from that area. I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. Every summer I spent in New Orleans. And so I got very much into their culture. There's actually two groups of French in Louisiana. They are the Creoles that come from the Bourbons from France, which is the Napoleonic groups. And they're much of a very French orientation. And then the Acadian French, which are in Southwest Louisiana. Two different cultures of French, both separated from the original French. So New Orleans at the turn of the 19th century was very low to medium income, Catholic based. For them, you only were able to eat meat one day a week, and usually it was pork or ham. And so you had that one day a week on Sunday that you had meat. Well, Monday, traditionally in New Orleans, was wash day. So this was the day that usually the woman of the house spent and washed all the clothes. So what that meant is that she had to do a dinner, but she couldn't spend her time over a stove. So this is what you do. Secret of good red beans and rice, folks. Soak the beans overnight. Okay. Put them in a pot, put equal amount of water over the beans. The beans double in size. And the way that you cook beans is you put it on the pot at 8 a.m. in the morning, and boil that sucker all day long. Okay. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you throw the ham in, you take what's called the Blessed Trinity, saute that in butter. The Blessed Trinity is bell pepper, onion, then it's either garlic or it can be celery, depending on which one you have, and you've got dinner. And this is tradition in Louisiana, practically everywhere, but mostly in New Orleans. And so this is one of those things that is a very cultural thing, but it is something that is based in the economy. And so we just say, and Monday is bad, just remember, focus on the red beans and rice. Okay, that's what's important. Now, I also want to come a little bit further than that
and talk about subcultures, which are even smaller. These are groups within groups. And if I were to say this in North Carolina, I could tell you that in Boone itself, there's multiple subcultures.
These tend to be even more defined. But they have a distinctive set of beliefs and common experiences, sometimes religiously based, sometimes through in sharing of items that are just as viable. And so, anybody been to Mardi Gras? New Orleans? Put it on your bucket list, okay? There's actually two kinds of Mardi Gras, right? So the Mardi Gras in New Orleans and Mobile is what is considered to be the traditional Mardi Gras. It started and has its roots from Jamaica, and it has it also from Europe. But if you go into Cajun country in southwestern Louisiana, you have the original Carnival. The Carnival means without meat, okay? Carnival was before the 40 days of Lent in the traditional Catholic culture, which meant that the day before you started the 40 days of Lent, which meant fasting, you would get rid of all the meat that you had because you couldn't save it. They didn't have refrigeration then. And so that's what Carnival came from, the carnival. So the Southwest Louisiana Mardi Gras evolved from something much different than the carnival that we see in New Orleans. So how does it work? So the way it would go is you have a bunch of people on a truck and they'd be sharing time together. They'd be playing their music. They would go to a house, they'd play a song. And when they play a song, somebody would bring out food. They'd gather up, they'd go with them, and they would all go off and have a good time. And that's how the Cajuns did it. Much different. They would have a big get together. They would wear these costumes, which are traditionally European based. They had horse games. They would have a chicken toss. They would have all of these things, and they would have a king and a queen, and they would have somebody that would be like Loki, and they'd throw Loki into jail and ask Loki to come out, and it would just be a generally good time. Just different, okay? And it's wonderful. So I just tell you all those things just to let you know and understand there are many different unique cultures, and they're separated narrower and narrower and narrower. If any of you went to Boonerang, you saw a lot of that, okay? Multiple different cultures. And the reasons I kind of bring all of those up is just to realize that all of these subcultures have great influences on the things that we buy and how we go to purchase these things, okay? Not only that, but we also have opinion leaders who will impact our buying decisions. And many times marketing will seek out the opinion leaders to speak about their products. Does anybody know who John Madden was? Football guy, right? John Madden was the coach of the Oakland Raiders. He was a broadcaster for nearly 30 years, and he was the face of Madden football. And Madden was considered an influencer, one that fundamentally changed gaming forever. Because when he wanted to put his name on it, he refused to have anything with his name that wasn't real football. So when they first showed it to him, this is 91, so the graphics were clunky and everything. And he looked at it and he said, why there are only 8 players on the team? And I said, well, that's all. No, football, you play with 11 people. So they had to come up with a game and make 11 people on it. And he said, well, what happens if somebody gets injured? Well, nobody, no, you gotta have it injured. And what is this red and blue get? No, you gotta have the teams. So he kept driving them to make the changes, to make it official. And he changed fundamentally the way gaming was because of his insistence that if he was going to be an opinion leader, it was going to be real. And so that's where we are today. And that's ironically where things are. There's a magazine called Maximum PC, and all it's about is just like how you drive that gaming industry. How fast can you drive things? And this is why NVIDIA has made its major jump, because the 3060 graphic processors that they have are just ridiculous, all right?
you're talking 60 frames a second on a 4K system is just crazy, okay? You don't understand the process. I've actually seen the video board is bigger than the CPU is, like that big. But social influences are the things that create that. The last that I have to talk about in this particular point is situational influences. So my dissertation actually was about physical and spatial atmospherics and how they affect our ability to purchase things. So there's this whole series of research about biophilic design, which is about restorative experiences in inside environments and how they can make us feel better, all right? So this ain't it, okay? That's all I can say. But the way that stores are laid out and the way that they're designed can very much affect how we feel about the shopping experience. Anybody been into Cabela's? Okay, yeah, just crazy. Yeah, amazing. All right. That the experience brings you a desire to want to go on. And by my wife, who's Swedish, if you've ever been in IKEA and make it out in less than 30 minutes, you know, I'm amazed, okay? Because they never tell you. Okay, so that's another thing. Time poverty, all right? We are suffering from time poverty, which means that we simply do not have the ability to process things in a way that we should. But if we don't have time poverty, if we're purchasing something for an emergency or a convenience, then our risk averseness goes down because priority takes over. We know that many individuals like to shop as groups. So I gave the example of shopping for a bridal gown. That is not something or generally done by yourself. And generally, it's the interaction with salespeople that makes that happen. So if, just another thing, if any of you parents or whatever ask you for a graduation gift, may I suggest a tailored suit? A good one, because everyone in their life needs one piece of garment that was only made for you, okay? I mean, and your interaction with the salesperson and their ability to tailor something for your size, I would urge you to go look at some YouTube videos so you know. But a good tailor is worth their weight. I have a friend of mine who's a six-figure tailor in New Orleans. I asked him how he does so well, and he says, well, he gets the pants off. And I went, excuse me? And he said, the first thing I say is, why don't you try this on? That's his way of doing it, okay? Special occasions usually mean special gifts. And then, of course, your personal mood affects everything. Situational influences, the noise does a great deal when it comes to deciding how involved you are in the purchase. So we're going to skip over buyer behavior. We're going to talk about market segmentation. Let's take a quick 5 and we're going to come right back.
Oh, Goes to the people.
Oh, right, yeah,
Probably that. Oh,
kind of. Let's help him breathe.
oh, no, yeah. It's my parents said they might not come on down.
No, I'm gonna try to email. Where were you gonna go?
Oh, yeah.
Ever been there?
Friday.
Yeah, you gotta do some hiking.
I know, that's what I heard.
Little Rock or Oxbow, one of those two, something fun. Yeah. They're getting good, like.
There's all the places like. Have these reservations.
Oh, yeah. You can go, on the other side of grandfather's house, like, down the ridge. It's like Edmund Road. Just a bunch of.
Actually has straight from
Back in there. It's a gravel road. It's nice. Like, I've never camped there. Never camped for Father's Day, but this. What?
John Kenner can go, ready for.
Road noise.
And wait, so good. Almost not
Yeah,
bad.
that's what I would do. True, I'm blind.
Yeah, what they're doing is great.
And mother, that's what we said. No, that's.
Starts at like 8:30, yeah.
I feel like vacation. Yeah.
So like, that's how I was gonna say, you know.
It's pretty.
It's graduation, $15 cash, gone. It's gone.
Hey, Gabe. My son hasn't called me to wish me happy Father's Day.
Oh, no.
No way. You told me.
Yeah.
First person to get off is gay, but.
Hmm. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna do the poker game at the table while the full rest of it. Whoever moves last. That's good. Really brave.
Watch out. Runs through the girl underneath the trail.
Nice.
I was like, why is she under there? All of a sudden, you see.
I won't feel like I'm in YC again.
It's, yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Like that I interned.
Hey, my cowboy hat's at home.
The non-intern version.
How's that being new? Like you're consulting?
No.
I what?
Definition of. So.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that would be really cool.
I don't think so. Yeah, asking about what position. The position I'm applying for. The other one, should be in North Carolina. I might.
Come visit you.
The other, it's I have a shot, I think it is one.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your end?
He was so sweet, and almost made me cry. I was feeling like a little bit down.
I could never show up.
Other friends had to spend a lot of time finding a role for me, and then. It didn't quite fit because I didn't have the work experience. That he spent a lot of time, he was for remote roles because he took a lot. Things that for remote stuff. And
Isn't that crazy? Oh,
Oh. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, wait. Let me see something. Well, test their difficulty.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. I can't. I don't have that ability, but I can.
Right now, I'm just prioritizing the places that I do. have data.
Yes, it is.
Wait.
So it was not before.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've been told multiple times. Ask
So I need to
your hand.
ask Ava for legal blocking.
That's not delaying my request, that's
The way they treated it. Netflix
I haven't.
Entire drop application.
All about doing it all.
Like,
And it didn't take long. The internet.
Group expression nine takes Netflix. Any expression I should view the exponent is.
So for the groups, so let's see, well, that's actually only two groups left then, so three groups have made choices. So, Apple Bites Back is done, Starbucks Lens is another, and you're taking Google, right? Netflix, excuse me, email me, please, okay? Groups just email me, tie goes to the runner, so whoever gets to it first, okay? So I'll talk about the specifics, but to find them, they're in the back of your book. They can also be online. And they're in the books and in the cases. And just like that handout we had the other day, it does a great job of going through and describing the case itself. One of the things that I'm looking for when you do the cases is I want you to do outside research. Everybody know how to do research through the library online. So library.appstate.edu, okay? More sources means higher grades. That's simple. Okay? Yes.
You want these cited in like APA or?
Yes, I would like them in APA standard. Does everybody know how to do that inside of Microsoft Word, by the way?
oh,
Let me show you something. So when you have 25 pages of bibliography like I had for my dissertation, here is what the sole reason, well, not the sole reason, but this is why Word is it. Okay, let me show you. So let's see. Define Word. Let me share Word. Okay, so let me show you a quick and easy way to do APA style inside of Microsoft Word. Okay, so what you do is if you look up in Word, you'll see this thing that says references. Click on that. Okay, you see this middle part here. It says manage sources. Click on that. And so I've got a journal article that I want to cite and I want to put it in APA style. So I click new. It is a journal article. So I have authors that I want to have. So let me put in their last name. That's my first author. And let's see, another author, and I can take and actually move them up and down. So I click there. And so I put in the journal name. Oops, that's the title. Oh, let's see, History of Silly. Journal name. Usually the important things to do is make sure that you get the year, and definitely you want to make sure that you get the pages right, okay? So let's see. If you do show all bibliography fields, you'll find that when you scroll down, this is the only real pain about this is
volume and issue is usually important now, so make sure you got those. And so, look at this little thing you got here. You got this little thingy here that's already set up, and you've got the way the citation would look, okay? So, click close. Now, just for the heck of it, I'll add one more, just to show you what it looks like. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Volume. So, so now I have that one. So now watch, this is what I do. Once you enter all the bibliography in there, you click on bibliography. You do insert bibliography, and there it is.
Oh.
That's it. Now it's stored in the document itself so that you never have to enter that again.
How much better than citation machine?
Oh my God, yeah. Now, let me show you something else, okay? I can change it to Chicago on the fly.
That is pretty-
See, you had a reason to come to school. Yeah, look, when you do like I said, my dissertation was 240 pages and like 20 pages of bibliography. I mean, this is a great advantage because, you know, when you've got thousands of them, the chances of duplication is real possible, and it's real easy to mess up in terms of spelling. So this is one of the great time savers of all time. So I urge you to use this. Like I said, give me references. References mean higher grades, okay? I also want you to be able to put it in the time frame of that paper is, so it's like right on the cusp. I would avoid as much as I can trying to go out into the future, all right? So remember that, and I'll talk about this more on Thursday, but I will want an executive summary, SWOT analysis, the competitive advantage, your goals and definitely the mission statements, okay? And we'll go through that framing. It's actually online, so if you want to review it first, go ahead. I urge you to read through it a couple of times before you meet with your group. It's good stuff, okay? These are real cases. These are real things that are happening. And before you get into it, I really want you to focus, what is it about the corporation that brings value? What is the heart of it? You know, go past all the other parts. What is the core of the product that the consumer finds the most valuable? And I will tell you right now, for Apple, it isn't the products. Okay? Remember, marketing myopia, focusing on the customer experience. That's with everything, okay? Everything is the customer experience. Okay, sweet, all right. Okay,
Dr.
let's-
Stiles, you said these are in the back of the textbook?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
If anyone, I have my textbook here, if anyone wants to look at it, I've got it available right there.
But they're also online, right?
Yes, they are. So if you use the VITA, click on the top of the website, I don't know if, I don't do this enough. I tend to assume a lot of y'all have, but this might be your first time through. And I try to put as much as I can out there. So if you go to VitaSource book website, at the top of the website, so as a teacher, I have different, but right there where it says read now, it will link out to Cengage and it'll be an ebook copy for you to be able to read. It might require you to put in your email address. I'm not sure. Okay, but there it is. There's the book, okay? You can access this, by the way, from your iPads.
So you can access it from any electronic device. It just looks easier when it's on. Okay, and yeah, all the cases are at the very bottom. So you just scroll to where it says cases and going, and there's where they start. Okay. Thanks for saying that. So, market segmentation. Market segment means we divide the groups into homogeneous segments and groups. These groups have similar likes, desires, needs, wants, or preferences. They group themselves in multiple ways. We'll talk about it with demographics, geographics, and psychographics. And a big decision is whether to segment at all, whether we need to segment anything, whether our group is considered equally across all market segments. That is a question we have to ask ourselves. But usually most firms opt to target one or more segments because quite simply resources are limited. And if we're going to do a mass market, we must use the one-to-many model as much as we can. There are many goods that are considered similar or the same to individuals all over, but even an egg means something different to me than it might mean to you. And so segmentation many times is our way to maximize our limited resources. And so what are the ways? We can mass market. We can differentiate market, target market, or we can niche market. And so we already talked about niche marketing, especially when it comes to, we're in a turnaround strategy where our resources are limited and we've got to do our best to focus on one individual thing. By the way, I saw JCPenney is closing 40 more stores. Really sad about that. Well, another great corporation that's having difficulty. So these are the ones, if you were to ask about on the test, and they were looking at segmentation approaches, these are the three. So the first is in mass marketing is there's no segmentation at all. It assumes all the customers have similar needs and wants, and only a single marketing program is needed. Usually you're also talking about goods that have a broad appeal, such as Coke. All right, that would be an example. With a product like that, where you're only having a single market, then low marketing cost and production efficiencies are the ways to go. In other words, do your best to control your costs. You have a single product, and so you have the economies of scale. But the difficulty, of course, comes is that when you put all your eggs in one basket, is that what, if that basket in essence breaks, you're in real trouble. And so once again, I'm going back to Microsoft, I'm looking at you. You know, the assumption is that the derived demand for Windows was going to go on forever, but they kicked the legs out from under it by changing the platform. Now they've done much better with the Surface Pro, but once again, that's having to focus on a unique market. So you have to be careful in the mass market. The goods have to be satisfactory for that. You spend much more time in the one-to-many model and maybe the many-to-many model, but not the one-to-one. Differentiated marketing is probably the way to go, where most of what goes on with market segmentation is. And so if we remember our discussion with the bicycles one week, we had bicycles separated by each unique need, like those who wanted it for economy, those who wanted it for recreation, those who wanted it for business, And as I said before, each one of those could take the same bicycle and you could use a different approach and go after different segments. So one of the great multi-segmented marketing approaches is baking soda. So baking soda has been around for time immemorial. And baking soda was one of those unique items that are after the World War II, where you started to have the proficiency of electric motors and more efficient refrigerators. You started to see a second use for baking soda that wasn't originally. Baking soda has been used for toothpaste. Baking soda has been used for baking. But baking soda also has another desired effect in that it absorbs moisture and it also absorbs odors. And so Arm & Hammer in the 60s came up with this brilliant idea of being able to open a baking soda with a little latch open, which you could just put in the back of the refrigerator. And then they did something even more clever, is they came up with an advertising program that said, change your Arm & Hammer baking soda the same time you change the batteries in your smoke detectors. Brilliant, okay? And so Arm & Hammer baking soda has multiple market segments based upon that form utility, just changing it into something different. However, if you only appeal to one group and there are no secondary uses of your product, the niche market is the way to go. The niche market has to be substantial enough and strong enough to be able to support it. But if I can focus on a single market segment with one product line and be successful and efficient, then I have a going concern. But niche marketing is different from marketing concentration. It is a well-defined market segment with very unique needs. It has a very attractive niche and a specialized group that doesn't readily attract competitors. So Joseph A. Banks, I'm going to go on the suit thing, all right? Men's Warehouse, that's a very unique group. And it is also a heavily intensive labor group as well. It does require trained individuals who are efficient in knowing how to tailor. That is a specialized skill. Outdoor equipment, skiing, skateboarding, all of those unique single kinds of markets that are attractive, but the big corporations just simply don't want to get into. My girls got really big into roller skating, and they still do. But we had to go to Wilkesboro or Winston-Salem to really be able to shop for roller skates. But that was an awesome place. Doesn't attract competitors. It requires a unique set of understanding and skills, but it was highly desirable. We can drill down even further into individualized segmentations, and we can do that now because we have the technology and the information to help support that. And so we have what's known as one-to-one marketing, mass customization, and then, of course, we have what's at the end now of social media, which is permission marketing. One-to-one marketing is where we look a wholly unique product for each individual customer. University has a very unique Moodle system built tailored around the students and has this special one-on-one feature. And it is known as what we call a turnkey system. And so basically it was built solely for the university, and it is maintained by individuals trained in Moodle, but specialized to the university, because of course the university has very special needs. So I've said before, one of the great systems that came around in the nineties and is active today were billing systems, but total immersive systems now for medical office and for lawyer systems as well. So two great industries that have been computerized is medicine and doctors. Excuse me, lawyers, forgive me. So if anyone has a lawyer friend, you know the extensive amount of research that they have to do. And they would have a bunch of people that do most of the grunt work going to the law offices to do a lot of that work. For most of it's computerized now and allows lawyers to compete one-on-one, but it is expensive. But it's built specially for those organizations. And so one-on-one marketing is a wholly unique product for each customer. Now, just a little bit wider than that is mass customization. And this is where the customer chooses the variety of options. And this actually was first really done marketing was by Burger King.
They're doing the pit maneuver. They're doing the pit maneuver.
Somebody's got their sound on. Somebody's game. All right, he's playing Gallagher. All right. Okay, anyway. So Burger King came up with the idea, they came up with the slogan, hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, special orders don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us have it your way. Yes. Okay, but it doesn't mean that they'll put spinach and avocado on it. It just means whatever's in the office, okay? So that's what mass customization is. And Build-A-Bear, to their infamy, took that to building bears. And it's one of those places I had to avoid when my children were 4 and 6. Not always, but, you know. And then when they started doing birthday parties, that was neat. So anyway, mass customization, variety of options on a mass scale. And then the last to talk about, excuse me, is in this, allowing marketers to permission to target you is one of the brave new worlds of social media. And so if you go in, and the greatest example is this is, do you want us to allow you to send notifications? And if you're got your mind somewhere else and click yes, then welcome to the brave new world. Permission marketing is more substantially for online viewing. You're giving marketers the permission to target you with email lists and also with daily notifications. The one thing permission marketing does give you is that you're already showing interest in the product. And if you have the opt-out option, then you have that. Now, there are 4 criteria. Excuse me. 5 criteria. When it comes to deciding. Bless you. Thank you. Whether you are going to or whether you're going to be successful in your in your target. And so the first criteria is that it is identifiable and measurable, okay? And by measurable, what I mean is you have numeric You have numeric substantiation, okay? You have numbers on the size of the group. But also it has to be substantial. It has to be worth your time to target it. If the group is too small, then quite simply, there's no reason to go after it. For a decade, or I wouldn't say for decades, but for a decade, the whole ex-gamer and skateboarding group was not considered worth the effort until somebody did ethnographic studies watching them and realized this was a whole subculture that hadn't really been targeted. And this is where Skechers came in and started to really make waves, okay? Responsive means that is if I market to them, that they can interact with me. It means that I can find some advertising medium that can go directly to them. Responsive also has to mean I can reach it, and when I reach it, they can talk back to me. And the last point, sustainable, is probably one of the more bigger things. And quite simply, what that means is that it is not a market that goes away. One of the difficulties with Krispy Kreme is that Krispy Kreme is a viable market, but unfortunately, when it comes to the size of the area, whether or not it's sustainable. So I don't know anyone who doesn't like, well, I shouldn't say that because everybody has their own taste, but fresh Krispy Kreme donuts, the ones pulled right off the bell, man, c'est bon. I mean, I love those. But the problem is that that's a treat, but it's not a meal, okay? So, you know, it's delicious, but I'm not gonna have them 3 times a week. And so the Krispy Kreme in Boone closed, the Krispy Kreme in Menard closed. There's one in Hickory still going. It takes a substantial population to keep it going. Now, the interesting thing is a place like the Comeback Shack. It's not only substantial and sustainable in Boone, but it's growing. They've done a brilliant job, okay? And there's also a Comeback Shack in Myrtle Beach, excuse me. And I think that's a perfect niche. And I've always said it in my classes, if they ever wanted to franchise, they have a brilliant idea. I really think they would do great. So the successful segmentation, I mean, I will not ask what is the number one, but sustainability, to be able to continue to excel, given the the population density. Yeah, that's number one. So how do we finally identify markets? We identify them by their behaviors, by their demographics, by their attitudes and interests and opinions, and where they are. I could say confidently within North Carolina, there are dozens and dozens of segmentations by geographic. Inside even Boone and Watauga County itself. And so segmenting is valuable to us because it's knowing which segments we wish to target that ultimately will help us achieve our success. And so behavioral is basically how we use our products and how many we sell. Remember that we have heavy users and light users of all things. Behaviors of consumers is powerful, but it's very difficult to execute a marketing plan just on what things people do. Usually what you have to do is provide slices of life. And that's how you target those individuals. So my son has been a gamer forever. He's a dungeon master. He's on the new beta site that he's one of 1,000 that is going to beta test the next World of Warcraft. So all of his activity is actually in one select place there's one store in the area he lives in, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, that is a game board place, and that's where they all meet, okay? And to understand that's the one location of that and online, ultimately, that's how you understand and achieve some kind of success. You usually combine that with other segmentation variables, usually geographic. But what consumers you have, who are the heavy consumers versus the light? And is there a way to translate a light user to a heavy user? Demographics are descriptors. Age, income, gender, education. It is the most widely used way to segment. Why? Because we can measure it. If I need any demographic information, the government provides me. What do they call it? Census. Absolutely. Good job. Yeah, census. That's how I can find that information. But the problem with that is it's a secondary database or secondary information. So it's brought from an entirely different reason, and it doesn't tell you how you feel about this. The why is something you approach with primary research. Okay. But it is very powerful because we know that certain people within certain groups from other research are dependent on certain things. Psychographic is the motives, the attitudes, the opinions, the values, the lifestyles, the interest, personality, all of those other things that group us individually beyond just simply gender, age, and income. And I use tailgating as my classic example because you find every strata of individual all collected together for a common purpose. It is much more difficult to measure and assess. Because basically you're throwing much of the measurement that you have away. Do not worry about the VALS framework. You know, if you take IO Psych, you would probably learn more about the VALS. I'm not caring about that. I just want you to understand what that psychographic segmentation is. And it is in my own opinion, the most valuable way to group individuals, to segment. Because you really get at the core of consumers. And then finally, the way is called geographic, but we look at it in what's called geodemographic, okay? There's a concept known as geoclustering. And let's see. Let's see if it's still on. See if the Prism database still exists. It still does. All right, let me show you something. Let's see. Clear this. Clear this. No, your help. Let's see. Here we go. They changed it. It may have changed. Awareness is basically set up so that it clusters individuals by unique geodemographics, and it provides a much greater way of understanding consumers. I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but just know this is that the Claritas database and the way that it is built allows you to understand individuals not only by where they are, but their lifestyle behaviors,
And it is a much deeper way of being able to understand audiences. I will probably try to come in tomorrow and make sure I've got it right. But I would like to show you how this works, and I'll do that later. Let's not lose any time. We will not worry about segmenting business targets. Finally, let's talk about targeting strategies, okay? So there's multiple ways that we can target. Target based upon market, target based on product, and it just depends on which one works best for us. We can target a single market with a single product. We can do selective targeting, in which we actually target individual products and individual markets. Selective targeting, an example of this would be if you go into Walmart, Walmart will have the iPads, they'll have the watches, but you will not be able to find in Walmart any of the MacBook Pros, because they believe that the MacBook Pro should be sold through selective stores like Apple Store, and it should be sold through schools, okay? So selective targeting, that's Apple. Mass market, Coca-Cola, all right? All markets, all segments, large product categories. Product specialization is one unique product across all different markets. I don't think of a good example of this. It's a good one. I would say more likely some of the specialized candy bars, those kind of things. You have that one unique product that goes across different markets and are usually used by different individuals. I'll give you a better one, okay? Procter and Gamble. Procter and Gamble with their particular dishwashing liquids and their their other products that they have, they'll use the same product across multiple markets. And then finally, there's a market specialization, and I would think of Skechers in this. Skechers has unique products, and they really define themselves on a very unique market circumstance. I would also look at Swatch as a corporation, which looks at a multiple series of products, but all given in a certain particular market. So let's work at those again. Single segment targeting. You take all your needs to a specific market. You understand those needs and preferences. And so Ray-Ban is a great example. So when I was trying to get Halloween for get a fake set of Ray-Bans, I actually got a real set. They're like $140. I went, it's ridiculous. Hey, I look good in them. So yeah, well, single part. Selective targeting. I got Procter and Gamble almost right. Multiple capabilities in many product lines, and you focus on the most attractive market. It diversifies the firm's risk. You're not solely counting on a single product. So it means that if one product fails, you can still go on. I would even say, ESPN and the Disney whole series are multiple markets with multiple products as well. So, mass market, okay? Frito-Lay is the largest chip manufacturer in the United States. They have multiple different selective types of snack foods. But I also put firmly Coke in there because that's even more mass marketing than anything. And Coke has spun off to so many different forms of Coke. Do you know they tried to kill Coke Zero? Yes.
They tried to kill Coke Zero because it was taking away the market for Diet Coke. Maybe people liked it more, okay? I swear to God. Anyway. Product specialization, you have one expertise. One product category. Match your needs to individual customers. And so they use pediatric, which is a brilliant one. Because every one of those are different markets, but you're focused on one given product. And then finally, having extensive expertise and knowledge in a single given market. So campus bookstores are one of those things that's being taken over by Barnes and Noble and the Follett Corporation on campus. And the reason is, and this is all started from the third bunch of people taking MBAs and saying that you focus on your core competencies and nothing else. And so what they specialize is on campus bookstores and education products. And they support campus bookstores and let them do all the work. You also see at other large universities, companies like Cisco that take over all the work in the commissaries and the foods that are sold. And so these are examples of market specialization where they own the market and they do that and nothing more. And so we are finished with chapter 5, okay? And so if you would, the remaining ones of y'all to make your choices in your groups, let's just head over there just 1 second. We will go back over this again, and if you want to read up before we start up, talk about how to analyze a case and the format and guide for case studies. This is what you will use to formulate your case. I will accept a PowerPoint and not a physical document, all right? I want you to present your case, your group members together. I do not want your cases longer than 30 minutes. Turn in your PowerPoints. The PowerPoints will be what I'll use to grade. You can share them through Google Drive. Put everything there, including your sources at the end. And that deliverable will be what we'll use. The case grade will be equal for all members. Before I give the final grade on that, I will give an online group evaluation so you can evaluate your fellow members, okay? Okay, let's go. I'll see you all tomorrow. We'll work on position.